Greetings, programs, and welcome back to another episode of the Awesome Friday podcast. My name is Matthew, and I am your host, and Simon is here as my co-host as
Hello.
usual.
As
How are you
ever.
today? How's it going?
I was out last night and I'm 46, so apparently I need a couple of days to recover from having 2 beers and 2 glasses of wine and some food in a very gentle book club meeting.
Four drinks at this age? I don't.
four drinks, and I was in bed by 11, and I was still awake. I'm like, oh my fucking god, I'm gonna die. But I guess that's my life right now. We have a treadmill now, and so I'm running out of it just to try and not get fit. It's
from
great.
now on, then I expect that you'll be recording whilst on the treadmill. Just be walking away.
Well, if
so
you want,
on the next episode,
breathing,
listeners, basically, if you hear like this, like and this like wheezing sound, that's going to be Simon on the treadmill.
I mean, in this house, that could be a number of things, but we've
just
wheezing and crying.
Wheezing and crying. Title of your sex tape.
I don't know. We got rid of I bought apparently it's called a div bar, I'm told. It's basically a chin-up bar that you don't put on your door. It's an entire frame for pull-ups and chin-ups and stuff. And I bought this 2 years ago. My wife said, I hope this isn't going to be one of the things you buy and use once and then it just takes up space. I'm like, don't be ridiculous. I'm going to use it all the time. I'm going to get ripped. And
you used it twice?
I used it once. It turns out she was right. And so my friend offered me a treadmill and he wanted this div bar. So we just did a straight swap. So now we have a treadmill, and in the last 24 hours, my daughter's used it twice, my wife's used it twice, I've used it a few times, and my son used it for 2 hours straight on this treadmill, and he came off this thing looking like he was about to pass out, and the calorie counter said 1,000 calories, which is half the intake of a child. So he's just a little nuclear fusion generator. So I guess we've already got more use out of it in a day than my entire div bar. But at some point I'm going to have to try and get my body back to any kind of fitness level, like any basic kind of fitness.
Seems like a lot of work.
Well, we have the advantage in that I'm tall and you're taller, and when you are tall, the weight gain is a lot harder to to kind of hide in your frame generally. So I'm not sure how much hiding I can do for much longer, but
I mean, I can barely hide it at this point, so it doesn't.
So come over and use my treadmill anytime you want. I can rest my iPad on the little shelf it comes with, and you can watch a show and wheeze along. What's what I'm going to be doing.
Does seem like a lot of work, though.
It does. It really does. But how are you? How's things with you? What have you been up to?
Things are okay. Watching a lot of stuff. Dealing with I'm not going to talk about this at length, but dealing with an ongoing quest for change of employment is a thing in this economy. And, watching lots of stuff. The Independent Spirit Awards were last night, which was interesting. I think I told you, but Everything Everywhere All at Once, which I believe was on both of our Best of the Year list, swept every award that it was nominated for. And set a record most awards for a single film in Independent Spirit Award history, which is kind of incredible. Next week seems like it's the strong front runner for the Best Picture Oscar at this point. And
just a reminder, we'll be live blogging the Oscars when they magically appear next Sunday, so we can get angry at Tar winning.
I mean, I don't think it will. I think so. Last night, Tar won Best Screenplay, which I think is fine. But the Daniels won Best Director, and Michelle Yeoh won Best Actress, and those are sort of the three that it has any kind of chance at. And honestly, I'm not going to get upset. I don't think it's an undeserving win. I was just kind of hoping that Sarah Polley would win for Best Screenplay. But she won the Robert Altman Award, which is given to director and cast and
So
crew of of a great of the best ensemble of the year. So
so you're talking about Women Talking, right?
yeah,
Women.
women talking.
Right.
Yeah.
I really need to. I feel like I should watch that before next Sunday. That should be something. There's a few of the best picture or the big films that are talked about. A few I've missed. I think I should probably catch up with.
Which ones have you missed? Do you think?
So Women Talking, I'll watch. After Sun, I'm not going to watch because I can't. I know enough about After Sun to know that it would like it is
So
laser guided,
so
constructed
as
to
your
destroy me.
as your friend, I will tell you that After Sun is indeed one of the best films of the year, and also it would reach down your throat and into your heart and pull out emotions you're not prepared to feel.
And I'm a total daddy. Like, I've got a daughter, and she has me wrapped around her little finger. And I don't need, I don't need to. I can't watch that movie. I already
Yeah.
know too much about that movie to watch it. But
Well,
I'm
so
intrigued
just
because Paul Mescal
I
is
was
fantastic, so I would like to watch it. And the young actress whose name I don't know, the 13-year-old, is meant to be
Frankie
phenomenal. Right?
Coiro.
Yeah. So I'd like to, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, she won you best youth perform best. I don't know. I thought she won something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, have you seen all of the best picture? Let's just do our 5 minute Oscar preview. Have you
Sure.
seen all of the um, all the best picture nominees? So those
Give
would
me two
be, just for the
seconds.
record, All Quiet, Avatar,
Yes.
Banshees of
No.
Inisherin,
Yes.
Elvis, Everything
Enough of
Everywhere,
it. Yes.
Everything Everywhere All at Once, The
Yeah.
Fablemans, Tar,
No.
Top Gun,
Yeah. Yeah.
Triangle of Sadness, and Women Talking. So it sounds
Yeah.
like you've seen like six. You've seen
Right.
six
I've
of the
seen.
10.
I feel like I've seen more than I usually have at this point. The
Yeah.
big one I should watch are Women Talking and The Fablemans. I feel like I'm not going to see. I'm not going to be able to see Avatar before next Sunday. I just don't have 4 hours of my life available to go and sit in a cinema.
Oh, don't be
Um,
ridiculous. It's only 3.5.
and the cost of it as well. I'm more than happy to wait for that to come out in my home theatre. But I feel like Women Talking and The Fablemans are going to be a big part of the conversation next Sunday. I might try and catch those somehow.
Yeah, I mean,
They're
I
probably
think
out. They're
Spielberg.
out in
I
demand,
think
right?
I think Spielberg has a really good shot. I hope he has a good shot at winning. I don't think he's going to win Best Picture, but I think he has a pretty good shot at winning Best Director.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yes, those are both out on demand. You should be able to find them somewhere. And they're both well worth your time. Women Talking, in particular, although not technically a Canadian production. Sarah Polley is a Canadian national treasure, so I will support you watching that regardless.
Yeah, it's
Um,
weird. I think Everything Everywhere All at Once would be my choice for Best Picture because it is a phenomenal movie and it deserves everything it gets. But there's just something very fitting if Top Gun got Best Picture. I just feel like it did
I mean,
so much
honestly,
for the industry and it's such a great film. And to have an action movie win Best Picture hasn't happened for a long time. And I would be quite happy about that.
I wonder what the last action movie that I know for sure was like an action movie that won would have been what, like Gladiator? I'd have to look at the winners.
I would not describe Gladiator as an action movie in the same way that Top Gun Maverick is.
I
But
mean,
it's
that's
got a record.
about as close as you're going to get. Although
Did
I will say that if they're willing to give Russell Crowe Best Actor for a Sword and Sandal epic, then they can give anyone Best Picture. Like does superhero movies, horror movies, whatever it is.
mm.
Yeah. Uh, that's not an action movie. Argo's not an action movie. Ooh,
Did
yeah,
Fury Road win?
the famous action movie, The King's Speech.
Did that really win? Did that win Best Picture?
King's Speech, yeah.
Oh wow, interesting.
Yep. And no,
Did
Mad Max lost to Spotlight in 2015. Which
Spotlight?
Spotlight's a great movie. I don't actually hold any ill will towards that. That's a good win. Uh, The Hurt Locker is more of a drama than an action film.
Hmm.
I guess The Lord of the Rings is more of an epic than an action film. Yeah,
Yeah,
Gladiator was 2000. That's about the nearest thing to an action film
yeah.
that's won
Huh.
in this century.
So, as a big fan of the action genre, it would make me quite happy for such a very blatant, heart on its sleeve action movie to win Best Picture. That would make me really happy.
So I have
And then
two things to
wondering
say about
what
that. One would be
okay.
that, like, if we're going to talk about the films that captured the zeitgeist, then RRR should have a Best Picture nomination, and it doesn't.
Hmm.
But also, yeah, I think that I would not be unhappy if Top Gun won. It definitely, again, captured the zeitgeist in a way that most of these other films kind of didn't. And really, it did, for better or for worse. No matter how you want to frame it, it did get butts back in seats in cinemas. So yeah, why not give it the Best Picture award?
Hmm. It's interesting that All Quiet has got a Best International Film and a Best Picture nomination. I thought that was usually one or the other.
No, it happens
I
all the
didn't
time.
realize. Oh, does it?
Like
Okay.
Parasite famously won both of those things two
Oh,
years ago,
okay. It shows
3 years
how
ago.
much I was paying attention.
Yeah,
Excellent.
and like
Right on the pulse as usual.
Roma. Roma, a year or two before that, it won Best
Right.
International, but it was nominated for Best Picture as well, if memory
Right.
serves.
Oh, okay.
Have you seen? I guess I know for a fact you haven't seen. I guess you've seen four of the Best Director nominees. You've seen Banshees, and have you seen
Triangle.
Banshees?
Seen
You
Banshees,
have.
seen Triangle, and
Yeah, you've seen everything
seen
except The Fablemans.
yeah.
And I don't think there's any undeserving nominee in that category. I kind of hope Spielberg takes it, but um, with the Daniels as my second choice. But I don't think any. I wouldn't be unhappy with any of them.
Yeah.
I mean, the actress categories are the ones that I think are the toughest to call. Like they're the most competitive this year. Like so, for best actor, you have Colin Farrell and Austin Butler and Brendan Fraser and Paul Mescal and Bill Nighy. And
Hmm.
Colin Farrell is having maybe the best year of his career. He's won a whole bunch of the awards leading up to this, but so is Austin Butler, and Austin Butler is playing Elvis. So that's exactly the kind of thing that typically wins.
Mm,
I'd honestly wouldn't be surprised if Bill Nighy pulled out like a Mark Rylance win where he's sort of everybody's second
mm,
choice sort of.
yeah.
And same with best supporting actor. Like so, those ones, like it's going to be. I think it's going to be Farrell or Butler. And with best supporting, I think it's
Hmm.
going to be Ki Hoi Kwan. Like because who else would
Hmm.
it be at this point?
Yeah.
Unless they give it to Judd Hirsch for similar, legacy reasons. But like
Hmm.
best actress, Kate Blanchett and Michelle Yeoh. Like how like I know you didn't like Tar, but like as performance, like I don't see that's a near impossible choice to make, and they've been splitting the awards down the middle the whole time.
Uh,
So just from like an odds perspective, like I don't think Ana de Armas has a real chance. Andrea Riseborough definitely doesn't have a real chance, even though she's pretty good in that movie. And
hmm.
Michelle Williams is just in the wrong category.
Hmm.
Um, And then best supporting actress, you have Angela Bassett, Hong Chow, Carrie Condon, Jamie Lee Curtis, and Stephanie Hsu. And like that's an impossible choice. Like all of
Hong
those
Chau's
performances.
in the best supporting.
Yeah, for the
I
whale,
didn't
which
for
is the
not for Menu.
the whale is I think the only. I guess I haven't seen Living, so the whale and Living are the only things that have a major nomination that I haven't seen.
I think the only thing that could truly make me slightly angry in this Oscars, I'm pretty cool with everything else, but the fact that Jamie Lee Curtis and Stephanie Hsu both have supporting actress nominations, and I think Stephanie Hsu in that movie is not just good. I think she's the actual like central hub. The reason why everything else works is because of her performance in that movie. And Jamie Lee Curtis is always great. Like I've got nothing against Jamie Lee Curtis, but I'd be I think she'll probably win actually, Jamie Lee Curtis for this, but I think it should
No,
be Stephanie Hsu.
I think it should be Stephanie Hsu as well. I think Angela Bassett's going to win personally,
Oh yeah, no, that's a good
with
call
a
actually.
with an outside chance for Carrie Condon. in Banshees of Inisherin. And that's based
I do
on like
like.
the same for the Angela Bassett for effectively the same reasons as Jamie Lee Curtis. Like, she's wonderful
Mhm.
in Black Panther, and also it's a bit of a legacy thing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Um, but Carrie Condon won the BAFTA. Carrie
Yeah, she's
Condon has won a
great.
couple of other awards, and Jamie Lee Curtis has won at least one other award too. I think she might have won the SAG, if memory serves. I don't have it in front of me.
Mhm.
And Stephanie Sue won last night. She won Best Breakout Performance at the Independent Spirit Awards. So, but
Right.
I think it'll probably be Angela Bassett is my guess. But Oscar voting lasts all the way till I think Wednesday this year. So all of
Right.
these late stage wins could have influence on the outcome.
So I didn't know who Hong Chau was before the menu, and she was so great in that. And we've just watched the episode of Poker Face with her in that she is so good in as well. And so
Mm-hmm.
uh, I'm gonna try and find out her other stuff. Have you seen The Whale? I can't
I know. I
remember
guess
if you've
that's
seen it.
the whale. Yeah, the whale and Living are the only two with major nominations that I have not seen.
Right. Okay.
So we'll probably watch the whale, at least the
Mhm.
whale, this week,
Yeah.
because it's
Good.
got more nominations than Living, I think.
I'm excited. I'm excited. I do enjoy our Oscars live stream. It's more entertaining than the Oscars. So do tune in, listeners.
Yeah, they're also
All
going to
of
be
you.
giving the Gene Herschel Humanitarian Award to Michael J. Fox this year, which is kind of great.
Oh,
Another
that is
another
cool.
Canadian national icon, national treasure.
Fantastic. That's
Yeah.
great.
Well, now that
There's
we've
that.
bantered about the rich people giving themselves golden statues, um, shall we move on to talking about some stuff?
Let's do that.
Right. Well,
Absolutely.
this week we are chasing the dragon that is the algorithm. We're going to be talking about a Marvel movie and a Star Wars thing. Um,
We better get some down numbers after this one.
yeah. So let's start out with the slightly older thing. We both finally had the chance to watch Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, the latest Marvel project. And Simon, why don't you take us through a brief synopsis of the plot
Okay,
of Ant-Man and the Wasp:
so
Quantumania?
at the beginning of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, Scott Lang is dealing with his. He's famous for being an Avenger now, for saving the world, and he's written a book. And basically, his life is now book tours and people giving him free coffee and having photos with their dogs and things. And his daughter, now grown up daughter, Cassie, now played by Catherine Newton, who is a wonderful actor. I love her. Is getting into the kind of trouble that he used to get in, but this time trying to stick up for the little guy by helping homeless people and getting in trouble with the police. And basically, um, he's upset with her for getting arrested and stuff, but she's trying to fight back, saying that he doesn't really help anyone anymore. He just does his book tours. Turns out Cassie's been in the interim has been researching Uncle Hank's quantum stuff and has been researching the quantum zone and has developed a map into the quantum zone, which in secret. So she secretly became this genius, which is very convenient. And Michelle Pfeiffer didn't know this. Michelle Pfeiffer is very unhappy because she's never talked about the things that happened in the quantum zone, and evidently there was a lot more that happened down there than she let on. And we find this out because wouldn't you know it, the map sends out a signal, and something tracks the signal and drags them all into the quantum zone, and that's within the first 10 minutes of this movie. They are dragged into this um, late 90s Star Wars prequel level CG quantum world that if you've seen the other Ant-Man movies and seen the quantum world, then great. But if you haven't seen them, don't worry, because it doesn't look or act like that at all anymore. Apparently they didn't look deep enough last time, and this is the super deep this is the ultra quantum zone where you can breathe without a helmet, and there's gravity and all kinds of things. But and when they're down there, they find various collections of people and technology and civilizations who all exist in this like bubble universe between space and time. And then they, of course, discover the antagonist, which is a Kang, Kang the Conqueror, who has been stranded down there and has gone a bit loopy, exerting his power and mad with power. And now Janet's back. He wants revenge because she shrunk his special battery, which would enable him to get out. Or not shrunk, she actually made it massive, and he needs Scott to do stuff that's going to reduce his battery to a normal size in this tiny quantum world so he can fly out. And hijinks ensue. That was a pretty good summary, I thought.
I mean, it's not bad. It's not bad.
I mean, that's the entirety of the movie. There's
I mean, there's more to it than that, but yeah, that's the basics of it. Like
well,
they
yeah,
go to a
yeah,
place, there's a MacGuffin, and
yeah.
Kang takes Cassie prisoner and makes Scott do a bad thing to save his daughter, and then they manage to win in the end. It's pretty standard superhero movie fare.
Mm-hmm.
Like the basic plot of this movie is one that you have definitely seen before, in terms of like the basic journey that the heroes go on, right down to like we're revisiting the past of a character whose past we didn't previously know, and we're looking more deeply into a place where they were. It's pretty standard. I will say that. So we're pretty late in reviewing this movie. It's been out for a couple of weeks now, and it's the first Marvel movie that is actually apparently just certified rotten on Rotten Tomatoes. And I will say that I don't really get that. Um,
Yeah,
I don't.
I don't.
I don't. Just to be clear, I don't think this movie is great. I don't think it's bad though. Like I don't get what makes this one stand out. I think I texted you earlier that or when I finished it, I texted you and I was like, look, I don't think this is Thor Ragnarok good, but I don't think it's Thor the Dark World boring either. It's
Mm,
it's a perfectly fine, straight up the middle double, which is what Marvel is honestly best at. Like, it feels like ever since Endgame, since Phase 3 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and since Endgame in particular, everyone who's complaining has really, well, not everyone, that's generalizing, but a lot of the people who are complaining, especially on like the TikToks and whatnot, are just expecting every film to up the stakes more and be Endgame over and over and over again. And I will say that this movie sort of tries to do that. It definitely abandons the low stakes charm of the first two Ant-Man movies.
yeah,
But like there's way worse films in the MCU, guys. There's way more. I will say that it's not good, but I was never truly bored. And I've been bored in MCU films before.
yeah.
So that's my hot take.
So I've seen it twice, and the first time I saw it, I actually enjoyed it quite a lot for what it is. In that it's a very, it's kind of someone just described it as being a bit like Krull. That when Star Wars came out and everyone tried to make their own sci-fi hero's journey, and it feels a bit like one of those movies that came out when all the Star Wars prequels came out with the same level. Like the CG is not great; it's quite flat. It actually reminded me a lot of Men in Black CG, which is kind of in that movie it worked because it was meant to be kind of stereotypical and superficial, but it's fine. There's some interesting character designs in this, but none of them are really developed. But so the first time I watched it, I was like, yeah, it's a pretty enjoyable like sci-fi movie. But the reason I watch especially the second Ant-Man movie over and over, my family does too, is that it's the first two Ant-Man movies are low stakes heist movies that are funny and
Mhm.
quirky and really dynamically shot. And this isn't really any of those. It goes a bit more serious. It's big stakes. There's no. They try to tie in a heist, but it's not really a heist, and it's fine. It's an enjoyable movie, but it's really interesting to watch my kids' reaction after my second viewing of their first viewing, and they were kind of just like ambivalent about the whole thing. Like
Yeah.
they really love the other movies, and it was fine. And when it pops up on Disney Plus, I'm sure we'll watch it again. But they haven't talked about it once, like since we came out, and that's what really struck me on my second viewing is that there's a lot in this film and almost none of it is developed at all past surface level. Like there's some really interesting sci-fi character stuff going on, and it's nothing is scraped into beyond a very, very uh,
It
superficial level.
does it does feel overstuffed. I will say
Mhm.
that. There's definitely
Mhm.
they're trying to cram. I feel like the reason it feels a bit shallow to you, and I'm sure honestly this when I ever get to watch it a second time, probably when it's on Disney Plus, I'll probably feel the same because there's just so much stuff. There's not really time to fully develop any of
Absolutely.
it. And like there's some fun stuff. Like William Jackson Harper is in this movie, and he's a really good actor, and he's a really good comedic timing, and he does have a couple of really good one-liners, but he's just there. He's not.
Mm.
There's not really a reason for him to be there. There's so many supporting characters within the
Mm.
quantum realm that yeah, just none of it is really developed to the full extent that it could be. I will
Mm.
say that the character of Modok is in this, and that is not a character that I really honestly thought I would ever see in live action. Um,
Yeah, I kind
because
of love
I
how
mean,
they
it's
did it.
just a giant floating head, and his name's an acronym for was it mechanized organism designed
Machine.
only for killing.
Yeah.
Which, and I will say, there's a great line in the movie
Oh,
where
the best joke.
Scott finally points out what I've been saying since I was like 10, which is that's mechanized organism designed only for killing. That's Modok.
The
Modok. Yeah,
Modoc
that's
jokes
right.
are the best jokes, and I don't know anything about Modoc, but I know that his like canon comic origin is different. They changed it for the movie, and they made a choice for the
Oh,
movie that I
it's a
think
different character. Yeah.
I think it works really, really well. The funniest parts of this movie are Modoc interacting with Scott and Cassie, and the jokes around who that character is and how they became that character are the funniest parts of the film, for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, I've read that some of the things that are being criticized about the movie are the screenplay, which again, yeah, it's kind of shallow, but it's
Yeah.
it's fun, and there's a number of really good singers. And Michael Douglas is clearly having just the best time being cranky Michael Douglas again. I
Mhm.
thought that Paul Rudd was really good as
Mhm.
the like father trying to reconnect with the daughter, who's effectively just him, rewound 20 years or whatever, right? Like it's and I also thought that and Jonathan Majors he's so good. Like I don't know,
Mhm.
like Jonathan Majors is about to win the year 2023. He is in this. He's in a Sundance movie called Magazine Dreams, in which he is phenomenal, and he's in the latest Creed movie, which I don't know when I'm going to get to see, but it's one of my most anticipated movies of the year. He's going to have a hell of a year, and this is part of that. He is
Yeah.
so good as the like slightly off, you know, Kang the Conqueror, the one in some ways the same as Thanos, being at one point he literally says basically the same thing where he's like, I need to fix the world, and someone else is like, and you're the only one who can see it's broken, right? Like we've been through this before, buddy.
Mm.
um, but he's so good as the just sort of like he's so like disaffected and slightly loopy from being down in the quantum realm for so long.
Yeah, I really like how he injected some sadness into it. I think a lesser actor would have really gone for scene chewing, and there is some like he waits until the last part of this movie to really unleash and get angry. But when he's talking to people, there's a lot of he feels really hurt. He's been let down by like an infinite versions of himself. He's been let down by Janet, and he he's been let down by others that don't share his vision, but it just turns into anger. And I think for a very superficial Marvel movie as this is, I think he really stands out as a very he gives a really nuanced and deep like performance for what could be a
Yeah.
very superficial character. He's very, very good.
I mean, Jonathan Majors being cast as Kang in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is going to be the gift that keeps on giving, because there's literally an infinite number of versions. Even if they just went with like the major canonical versions of Kang, that gives them
Mm.
more than a dozen to work with. because his whole thing is that every version of him is a different variant from a different choice in a different timeline. Which is, spoiler alert, you get to see the Council of Kangs in the post-credit scene, and it's pretty great. It's pretty great to see so many different versions of Kang just on screen at one time. And it means we're going to get a different Jonathan Majors performance every time we see him, which is going to be great. We've already had two really good performances by him as this character.
I will say something that I've noticed. We've seen Kang twice now, once at the end of Loki and once in Quantumania. And both times their main message has been, you think I'm bad, but the one that's coming later is worse. And
yep.
I hope that's done now. Like, we know that there's a number of bad Kangs coming. Like, I don't need every Kang now to go, well, I'm only doing this because the next one's worse. I don't need that to be their motivation now. We've seen that twice now. So it's an interesting motivation. And it's an interesting idea that the end of this movie plays with. Like, maybe, did we do the right thing in stopping this Kang if his whole reason for existence was trying to stop a worse Kang? Like, did I do the right thing? So that's an interesting angle, but we've seen it twice now.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, the next Avengers movie is called The Kang Dynasty, and my guess is that it'll be multiple versions of Kang that are the bad guy. Like, it won't be just one. It'll be one at a time in the like solo movies that he appears in, but in the Avengers one, I bet it'll be at least 3.
So give me some spoilers from the comics. How on earth do you stop an infinite being across infinite versions of himself? Is it an Ultron situation where there's one Kang that is like the Hive Kang, that if you kill that one Kang, will the other Kang stop? Like, how do they kill him in the comics?
Over and over again.
Oh, it's just like persistent.
No, and the major hook, if you're a comic book reader, one of the major hooks about Kang is that every version of him is quite different. And because he comes from multiple variant timelines, so you see a couple of these in the post-credits scene, but there's one version of Kang that like went back in time and ruled Egypt for a while, and his name is Rama-Tut. There's a version of Kang, because Kang is actually, in the comic books, is like a 31st century descendant of Reed Richards. And there's a version who, like, when he's 20 or something, or 15, like, learns he's going to grow up to be a villain, and then goes back in times and basically becomes young Iron Man for a while. Like, there's every version of Kang you could possibly imagine basically has existed, and they're all quite different. And that is going to be the great strength. Again, that, like, it's going to be the gift that keeps on giving.
I was wondering if this is a hint towards the casting of Mr. Fantastic with the Fantastic Four coming out. If we've got a black man as Nathaniel Richards, if they're keeping it canon that he's the son of Reed Richards, then that might give us a clue as to who they're casting as Reed. Maybe is that overthinking it?
I mean, maybe. I think. I think that 1,000-year difference is enough for that to maybe have changed. But until we knew, my guess was going to be that, like, that he would, before we knew what was going to happen at all in Phase 4. Kang was one of the ones that I thought would probably be the next big bad, and I thought they would just make it so that he was a descendant of Tony Stark instead of Reed Richards. But now that they also have the rights to the Fantastic Four, I assume that he'll just still be a descendant of Reed Richards.
One of the casting rumors before this movie was for Reed Richards was William Jackson Harper, which I think would have been a fantastic choice. But now they've kind of blown that now. They can't. Yeah. They can't really.
I think it's super interesting that they've been talking to Dev Patel. I think that'd be a really good choice too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That would be a great. Yeah. That would be really good. I wonder. I don't think he'd do it, but yeah, that would be a great casting choice.
Yeah. But yeah, just to circle back, I think, like, this movie's fine. This movie's totally fine. I didn't really even have I didn't really even have that much of a problem with the CG. Like, there's a lot of it, and some of it becomes a bit like soup in the background. But like,
Yeah,
it's fine. It's nothing I haven't
it's
seen
fine.
before. Nothing
It's
I
not
haven't seen
weirdly.
before and done worse. I've definitely seen it done a lot worse. Like, this
Yeah,
is
for
not
sure.
great, but it's not bad, and I
It's
don't
not
get
kind
it.
of flat to me. Like I've mentioned Men in Black, I thought a lot about John Carter as well. John Carter of Mars, the live action one with what's his face, and
Yeah, with Taylor
it
Kitsch.
felt, yeah, kind of flat, and it makes you really appreciate, like, you say what you want about George Lucas, but that man can build a world and make it feel real through computer animation, through models and whatever. And it
Yeah,
felt like
sometimes.
kind of weirdly flat. And there's a lot of a lot of running into the camera away from blue screens. Like that happens a lot of real
Yeah,
people running in front of blue screens, and it's quite noticeable. But I agree with you for the most part. It's totally fine.
yeah. Um,
So how
well, what
many
would you give
stars are
it
you
out
giving
of?
this one then?
I was gonna say, how many are
Um,
you giving it? Because I'm fine to give it 3 out of 5. Like, it's totally fine. It's totally
so
fine.
I'm conflicted because the first time I watched it, it was a 3, and then I rewatched it, and it really became very stark how empty and underdeveloped it was, and it went down to a 2. So I think I'm going to go with 2 stars, which breaks my heart because I love the second movie, and it just didn't have the depth there that I needed. So 2 stars from me.
Hmm. Interesting. As a side note, how did you feel about Cassie Lang being recast?
Oh, it's just a Hollywood thing. I'm sure Catherine Newton is an experienced actress who is a name, and she's clearly. I think they're probably going for Young Avengers at some point, and so they'll
Oh, they
need
definitely
someone.
are.
All right, so they'll need someone with a bit of name power, and whoever the actress was in Endgame wasn't someone that is a recognizable name. So I'm fine with it. It's
Hmm.
just a casting thing.
True story. The in the comic books, let me just Google this to make sure I'm getting it right. Um, but in the comic books, I'm pretty sure that Cassie Lang, whose superhero name is Stature, um,
Oh,
is
stature.
romantically involved at one point with Iron Lad, who is the aforementioned young version of Kang, who comes back in time to
Of
and is
course.
basically like young Iron Man for a while.
Oh, comics.
Yeah. So yeah, I
Okay.
mean, yeah, this movie's fine. I don't. It's. I mean, as always, I personally am on team see it for yourself. But I would say that like it's fine. It's totally fine. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's it. It's fine. It's fine. There's
I
definitely
agree. Yeah.
worse ways to spend an evening or an afternoon. You
It,
know,
I,
it's
I'll say what I said to you after I watched it the first time. It's not a particularly good Iron Man movie, but it's a really enjoyable late 90s sci-fi movie. Like
well, it's
it's
probably a
fun.
good thing it's not a good Iron Man movie because it's an Ant Man movie.
Oh God, why am I getting all my names wrong today? Oh, I'm just giving you so much ammunition for
I mean,
it's not a great Ant-Man movie, but it is a fine. Just edit, just fix it in post. That's fine.
they
Yeah,
already
just
tried
here.
that, but yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
dub this over. Ant-Man. There you go. You can stitch that in when I say Ant-Man.
No,
Okay.
I'm gonna keep the part where I make fun of it in there. So
Okay. Deal. Let's go on
good.
to our next movie. I'm never going to watch
Yeah,
this film again, so let's move on to our next movie.
awesome. Well, so the next movie is actually a show, and again, we're
Oh
chasing
yeah.
that algorithm dragon because we have been blessed. We had our timelines blessed with the first 2 episodes of season 3 of The Mandalorian. Now, season episode 1 has already aired at the time you're going to be listening to this. So if you're not caught up, please do so. We probably won't be spoiling very much of it, but we
It's
will
not
be
much to
discussing.
spoil in the first episode.
I mean, yeah, spoiler alert, not a lot happens. But we're going to talk about episode 1 and episode 2. So to catch you up a little bit, season 3 opens with our favorite hunky, not Boba Fett character, um, paired back with his son, Grogu, Baby Yoda, whatever you want to call him, and seeking redemption for his transgressions as a Mandalorian, uh, which is a fancy way of saying that at one point he took off his helmet, and now the other Mandalorians don't want to talk to him
Oh,
anymore.
fucking so bored of that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so he asks if he can redeem himself, and he learns that if he goes to Mandalore and bathes in the living waters and blah blah blah, and can prove that somehow, then they'll forgive him. And so the first two episodes are basically like him finding that information, and then heading out to Mandalore, basically. And that's basically all that happens. There's not. It's pretty slight so far.
There's a lot of resets going on. So Grogu's back,
Yeah,
and he's like, I want this specific robot that died for me. I want that robot back, which apparently I can just do. And it's like,
yeah,
it doesn't matter.
it's
It doesn't matter that it was a meaningful sacrifice. I want that robot back. And oh look,
yeah.
here's that robot that you've seen before. It's like, oh Jesus, there's
If
no movement
you
in this show.
if you didn't watch the Book of Boba Fett, then parts of it will be confusing because they resolve part of the Mandalorian and Grogu's character arc story in an episode of that show. I remain convinced that the Mandalorian was only ever meant to be a 2-season show, and that the Book of Boba Fett was meant to be season 3 of this show. Like it was meant to be kind
Yes.
of like an anthology thing. But then, Pedro Pascal and this character got so popular, they decided to scrap that idea. So they basically reset it so Grogu's back with him. He still has the dark saber. Um, I mean, that's the whole show. He goes to Mandalore and does the thing. My short review of this show is that if you have been enjoying the show, you will continue to do so. If you are of the opinion that it is empty fan service, that will also continue to be your opinion. It has not changed even a little bit. And in fact, there's more fan service in this one because they've started like there's an integration of admittedly like of the maybe 3 good things in Rise of Skywalker, one of them there's a fan service moment for in the first episode of this. And to be fair, like I'm curious to see where it goes because there are some hints that they might start exploring something interesting. And they're very slight hints, but I really, really, really want them to explore the fact that Din Djarin, which I'm just going to say that I think it's a stupid name. Even for Star Wars, I think that's a stupid name. But anyway, I really want them to like explore the idea at all that he was raised by a cult, by like an extremist cult. Because he's met many other Mandalorians now who are basically like, bro, you're in a cult. Like, take off your helmet. You're in a cult, bro. And I really want them, and it feels like there's a few moments in the first 2 episodes, and in the second one in particular, where it feels like they might want to go down that road and explore it just a little bit.
Yeah,
I don't have a lot of faith that they will, but like it's just enough to be like, I kind of want to find out if they do. You know what I mean?
It is getting to, yeah, I totally agree. And it's getting to the point now where it's so obvious that he's in a cult and being brainwashed. And the story is so focused on him trying to get his quote unquote redemption in the living waters of Mandalore so he can atone for his discretion. So he is so. It's hard to root for someone who is so brainwashed and so stupid when you've got Bo-Katan, who is a badass, clearly, who is able to swing the darksaber around like it weighs nothing, whereas he is unable to lift it at all, which is again just stupid. But it's hard to root for a main character. The show really wants you to root for this character, who's a fucking dumbass. And every part of this series that tried to be progress anywhere has just been reset piece by piece. And it's just the same bloody show, just treading the same stupid things about him. Oh, I took my helmet off once. I don't care. Like, literally, all the other Mandalorians take their helmets off. Like, this is a moment where we finally get to see Pedro Pascal's handsome face doing some acting. because the helmet doesn't matter anymore. But no, we have to tread the stupid, like, atone for this bullshit. I'm so bored with it, and it's not going anywhere.
It occurs to me as well that like in the other places in Star Wars where the dark saber has been used, namely the Clone Wars and in Rebels, it's basically said that if you're a Mandalorian and you possess the dark saber, then you're basically the monarch of Mandalore. Like you are the Mandalorian at that point. And Din Djarin has the dark saber. Like he has it. And so if they're like, you took off your helmet, you're a Mandalorian no longer, he could, I mean, honestly, couldn't he just like hold up the dark saber and be like,
Uh-huh.
actually, um, I took off my helmet so I could look my son in the eye, and I have this. Like, I, I'm just spitballing here. Like he could do that, right? Like I'm not crazy. Yeah. It
There's all
feels
this
like
lore, all this bullshit lore, 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 has come from a side character who was just a bounty hunter. So we didn't see him with his helmet off because he was always working. It's like making a show about a McDonald's worker who refuses to take off their McDonald's uniform because you only ever saw them serve McDonald's. Like
yeah,
it was just his armor. There was no suggestion that it was a religious thing or a cultural thing. He was just some dude wearing armor, one of millions of dudes wearing armor. And it's just I'm so bored with the elevation of Mandalore as being this like important thing where the helmets are this cultural identity and which also makes no sense and is very unhealthy. And just for skincare, it's very unhealthy. They must be pasty as fuck under there. No vitamin D at
I
all.
mean, they can travel at light speed. I'm sure they've figured out basic skincare. But
Have they? Where do they apply it though? Do they? Oh, it's
uh,
just. And he has to drink. When he has a drink, he has to tip his stupid helmet up and take little sips under his helmet. Like
well,
they
when he
haven't
eats,
invented
when he
straws.
always eats alone, I guess too.
Oh my god. It's just at this point I just don't care. Pedro Pascal is a brilliant actor and you've got him under these layers and most of the time it's Clint Eastwood's grandson anyway or if it's still that guy doing it. Um the and it looks really good. Like Disney streaming is very high quality, and the audio is really good. The design is fantastic. Favreau and Filoni know how to design something that looks good, something Star Warsy that looks good. But everything else is just I'm so bored of the fan service, especially after Andor. After
Yeah,
Andor showed us like what you can do if you don't want to be fan servicing, you don't care about legacy, and you just want to make good stories like Tony Kush, not Tony Kushner, Tony, God,
Gilroy.
Gilroy, thank you, who openly has said, I don't give a shit about Star Wars lore. I just want to make a good story. And this show is so obsessed with every fucking detail being something you recognize. Even the new robot now is, of course, it's that robot from before.
Yeah,
Like, just who cares?
it's
And
interesting
I've
too
been
because Filoni, who very famously behind Clone Wars and most of the animated stuff in the last like 2 decades, really. But like in Clone Wars and in Rebels, there was a lot of fan service, but it was always sort of in service to story, like the story they were trying to tell. And this sort of still feels like the other way around to me. Like it's very
Mhm.
much. I say this every time I watch an episode. I think I end up texting you that hey, I just watched the latest episode of fan service, a Star Wars film.
Yes, every
Like,
time, and you were right.
and I
The
feel like
worst
it's
thing they
it's
did.
weird because
Sorry.
Filoni is so able, has in the past been so able to balance that, like making something fan servicey but also stand on its own. And I don't quite get why this one doesn't do that better.
The worst thing that happened is that Grogu became a toy. Because if you remember when Mandalorian came out, there was this big gap between Grogu going absolutely, or at that point, Baby Yoda going stratospheric in the public consciousness, and there was a 3 or 4 month gap before anyone could buy anything in any Disney store that looked like Grogu because they had no anticipation that it would be needed to be a toy. And suddenly they realized, holy shit, we've got a product that people want to buy. And I get the feeling that there was the end to the Lone Wolf and Cub arc where he delivers Grogu, he does his job. You got fine, bring back Luke, take the Yoda, go and be Luke and Yoda, fine. Like to reset any hope of this story doing anything interesting. And at that point, they could have removed, like, given him something new to do and given him the impetus and the motivation to take his damn helmet off, and we would have had a more interesting show. And
I mean, I feel like
I
they're sort of driving at that now with him, like, actively understanding that he is this child's father. But I think we've all forgotten that Grogu's also 50 years old, right? That, like, how are they going to resolve this arc ever? Like, he's that baby's going to be a baby for, like, I mean, Yoda was 900 and change years old at the end of the original trilogy. So,
right?
like, how, like, I don't know.
Where is Grogu in the prequel trilogy? Where's Grogu in any of the movies and things that follow up? And
Well,
they had a great
where is
out.
any? To be fair, where is any of that species anywhere other than
But
just there's
that's
like Yoda, and in the books there was another one. There's only two.
well, they've already established that he's a rare like species, so that's fine. And they had that out when they'd given him to Luke. Like maybe Luke decided to hide him because he's too powerful. Maybe he was just too much, or maybe whatever. The Emperor. There was this thread about the Emperor using him to clone himself, which seems to have been completely put by the by as well. But now they've brought him back. They've reopened this problem. Well, we've either got to get rid of Grogu, like in a way that doesn't make every child in the country cry when they realize they can't kill Grogu and they can't have Grogu exist by the end of this show. So now they've painted themselves into that corner again.
Yeah, I mean,
Because
because
the universe is not
ultimately, if he'd stayed with Luke, then he would have died before the events of
right.
the sequel trilogy. Because
Right.
Kylo Ren destroyed the new Jedi Temple.
Oh, Kylo Ren kills Grogu
Yeah,
is a canon explanation I would get behind.
yeah. But I mean,
Oh man.
that's not very fan servicey though. And that's not very merchandisable.
Oh,
Even
that's what the
though
show
we as
is.
a society venerate the fascist bad guys of this universe way too much.
Yeah,
Just
we really
like
do.
way like I'm just gonna go ahead and say this. Space Hitler is too popular. I'm just, like maybe I get that maybe like, we love Obi-Wan Kenobi and I even get loving Anakin Skywalker, but Space Wizard Hitler is too popular.
Mhm.
He's the bad guy, It's
Yes.
anyway.
But people want to see him do his shit because he's cool. Oh well.
I mean,
So
at
I
the
don't
end of the
know.
day, most of Disney's revenue comes from places like merch and parks
Yeah,
and stuff like that
hugely,
anyway.
absolutely,
So
massive percentage is merch.
yeah, it's a whole
Um,
it's a whole thing.
I don't feel any kind of excitement or anticipation for a new episode of The Mandalorian dropping. Like, I mean, I'll get round to it when I have lunch at some point. Because
Yeah,
I don't have any hope anymore that this show is gonna even try to to learn from Andor in any way at all. It's like they've just made obviously the production schedules they can't change it based on the success of Andor, but it's fine if you want a more classic Star Wars show. That's fine, but you've got to find stories in it, like the books now that are non-canon. They're varying quality, but they always found a way to tell new stories. That's where Thrawn came from,
yeah.
and this isn't
I mean, they're just
trying to
using
tell anything interesting.
all those um all those novels and stuff they declared non-canon. They're just cherry picking the best ideas out of them
Yes,
now, which I mean, fair enough.
because they can.
What I would say is I think it, and maybe I'm wrong, but it does feel like the show itself has more, just visually speaking, has more depth than it did
Mm-hmm.
previously. And I kind of wonder if they learned a little bit from Andor to maybe stop using digital backgrounds quite so much. Either that or the digital backgrounds have gotten just a lot better in the past couple of years.
Maybe
Because it does, to my eye, it does look better than it used to.
it does
Um,
feel like they're using less capital V volume backgrounds, but
yeah.
that so hopefully that is indicative of them improving. Like, as long as our eyes are full, that's the only important thing, isn't it? But it did feel a bit more physical, for sure.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's fine. How many? So we watched the first. I don't. I always have a hard time. I can't. I'm not going to rate the whole series. I'm just going to, But the two that we've seen, what would you give them?
Yeah.
What would you give them out of 5? And feel free
Two.
to rate them separately or together, whichever way you want to do
They're
it.
both like, I'm going to lump them in together in 2. Nothing happened. The first episode is actually notable because almost nothing happens. And I don't mean in like, oh, there should be some action to move the story forward. I mean, like, the meaning of the word drama is something happens, and nothing happens in the first episode apart from him deciding, I want to reset this, I want this robot back, and this, and when it ended, I was actually quite surprised because I was like, there's no way that's the end of an entire episode because nothing happens. And the second one is a bit more happens, and Bo-Katan's cool and everything, but reference 2 stars. I don't care.
Yeah.
What about you?
I would say that I think the second episode is better than the first. So I guess if I'm going to rate them together, it's still a 2. You're right. If I rate them separately, then it'd be 2 and 3 for the second one. But it's all distance. It's all, very first acty. And it's fine. It's fine. My hot take here, my scalding hot take is what I said before. I think if you've been watching The Mandalorian and you've been enjoying The Mandalorian to date, you will continue to do so. So if this show is your jam, I'm super happy for you. It's going to continue to be your jam. If you're looking for something more from Star Wars, this is not going to be a place you're going to find it.
All signs point to this for sure. I'd be pleasantly surprised if this decides to make some waves and actually do something, but I don't hold out any hope whatsoever.
Yeah. Good. Well, okay. That's two Disney projects down. So hopefully we'll move on to something else next week. I don't know what it's going to be just yet.
Maybe it's our Oscars show next week, right? Or are we going to do 2? We'll talk about that another time.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about it another time. But yeah, something will be. We'll be back next week anyway.
Yes, one way or another.
One way or another. We've already had our break week for the quarter, so we're gonna call it there. I think. Thank you so much for listening. If you're new here, welcome, and if you've been listening for a while, thank you so much for sticking around. We very much appreciate you and everything you do. If you like what you've heard, please consider smashing that like or subscribe button or giving us a 5-star review on your podcasting platform of choice. Those things all help immeasurably. And so would telling your friends. Just tell 2 friends, and maybe they'll tell 2 friends. Them all. And okay, we'll split the
of telling.
Yeah, tell a median amount of your friends. How about that? And then they can tell a median amount of their friends.
Come on,
and so
nobody knows the difference between medium and average these days. That's
median with an N, which means the middle amount.
Yes, that's
yeah. Otherwise, if you want to support us more directly, we do have a Patreon and a Ko-fi. You can find the Patreon at patreon.com/MCSimpson because it was originally mine and now it's the show's. And you can find us on the socials. I am at Matthew AF and Simon is at Temporary Pen, and the show is at Awesome Friday CA. We record this here in Vancouver on the unceded lands of the Musqueam and Tsleil-Waututh and Squamish nations. One more time, thank you so much for joining us on this Awesome Friday.
Thank you. Bye-bye.